Hello, here's a short talk that I recently gave at a Ethics and Animals event, and it's called Logic Saves Lives, How Logic Can Help Change Hearts and Minds. And the primary audience was people who advocate for animals. They try to encourage people to take animals' interests seriously, perhaps consider not eating them, considering going vegan, reducing their meat consumption, and the types of objections that they tend to get. The other audience, the bigger audience, of course, is people who hear sort of arguments for taking animals seriously, hear arguments for eating less meat, arguments for going vegetarian or vegan, and the defenses that they tend to have. So, how do I advance the screen? Here we go. So, this piece of math here is a logical formula. It says A is Q. Why is that? Because A is P. And for anything that's P, it's Q. So this is just a way of symbolizing, like this simple argument, Socrates is mortal. Well, I think that because Socrates is a man and all men are mortal. This is called a simple syllogism. It goes back to Aristotle. Very useful argument. Why is that? Well, lots of arguments against plant-based eating, a lot of defensive reactions can be symbolized as a syllogism using this pattern. So here's some common reactions. People might hear some argument for reducing their meat consumption, for going vegan or whatever, and they respond, yeah, whatever, but, don't you know that eating meat isn't wrong because it's necessary or it's natural or it's normal or it's nice, meaning, it tastes nice. And they think that saying these things somehow establishes that eating meat isn't wrong, and so the arguments given to think that it is are poor arguments. Well, let's apply our logic here. We can state these arguments as syllogisms. Uh, this involves adding a unstated premise in each case. This premise here is in red. So, eating meat is normal, therefore eating meat is wrong, or not wrong. How do you get from that stated premise to the conclusion? All normal actions aren't wrong. Well, is that true? No. There are counterexamples. There are all sorts of actions that happen all the time. They're normal, but are wrong. What are some of these counterexamples? Next, eating meat is natural, so it's not wrong. Well, the unstated premise that we need to add here to make a syllogism is that all natural actions are not wrong. And here we'd have to ask, like, well, what do you mean by natural? But it seems like just because an action is natural doesn't mean it's not wrong. Somebody could be like very violent, and that's like their natural tendency. They got a real short fuse. The fact that they're explosive, violent that way is natural for them. Does that make it not wrong? No. We could develop other counterexamples. All right, eating meat is nice, meaning it tastes nice. It's pleasurable to eat it. All actions that are pleasurable activities are not wrong, so eating meat is not wrong. Well, no. The second premise here is clearly false. Just because something causes one person pleasure doesn't make it a morally permissible action. All sorts of wrong actions produce pleasure only for one person. There's a victim involved that's ignored. All right, next, eating meat is necessary, meaning it's necessary for health. All actions that are necessary for health are not wrong, so eating meat isn't wrong. The typical focus here is on the first premise, because this is false. For most people, they can be fine not eating meat and animal products, and they might even be better off. So, but it's interesting to think about the second premise too. Is it true that anything necessary for your health, anything necessary to do for your health is not wrong? Um, we could think about like some kind of extreme examples where, what if somebody had to harm somebody else in various ways for the betterment of their health? What if somebody had to steal an organ to improve their health? Would that be okay? Seems like no. So premise two might be a bit naive. All right, so we state these arguments as simple syllogisms. We see these are bad arguments. All right, some common reactions here is to sort of think that counterexamples are you equating something to something else, something else. So here, like the normal action that you're wrong, you say is wrong. Somebody reacts, oh, You're equating murdering people, which is normal but wrong, to eating meat. No, the point was a counterexample. It wasn't like equating anything. Almost always when anybody says false equivalence, nothing was meant to be equivalent. A counterexample was given. Another common reaction is people just kind of want to move on to other things. All right, some more arguments. Hey, don't you know animals eat other animals, and so it's not wrong for us to eat meat? Well, this argument depends upon thinking that all actions that animals do are not wrong for us to do. This is false. Counterexamples can be found. Animals aren't rational or smart. What do you mean by that? But all beings that are not rational or smart are not wrong for us to eat. Well, babies don't seem super rational or smart. So there are counterexamples here, bad arguments. Here are some more abstract arguments. I'll let you look at those and think about them. So in sum, logic can help us save lives. Here are two questions from Aristotle, why I think that, asking for reasons, arguments that we can then formulate often as syllogisms or other types of arguments where the full structure of the reasoning is displayed. And another important question is asking, what do you mean? Seeking clarification. All right, this was super quick. I hope this helps.